required, but the overriding issue right now that I don't have an answer for the committee on is whether the city would even be permitted, does even have the authority to permit this to happen. The traffic circle outside of City Hall is State Trunk Highway 20 and 32. The state controls state highways, and I'm trying to get some answer on whether the state would ever allow something to be painted on a state highway as opposed to the city permitting something on a city side street, if you will. I don't have an answer yet. I have a contact in the general counsel's office that I've reached out to, but I don't have an answer, and I think perhaps before the committee gets too far into this particular issue, we should wait and see if the state would even consider allowing this, so the committee has the information in front of it. But we generally would, anytime we've allowed something to be painted in a street, there has been a plan, not a lot of history of it, but there's been a plan that has been required from the proposer.
Questions, anyone? Alder Perez?
Yeah, thank you. Couple of questions. Since we have precedent that we can put art on the street, and should we follow the model of the previous requester with the request being put down and an alternate location if possible to proceed with if the state denies riding on the highway?
Well, I think the city would be in a better position if it follows the previous model with respect to a specific plan and a specific design, so the Common Council knows what is being proposed. Whether they want to propose alternate locations, I suppose, is up to them. Mm-hmm. But I really just don't have an answer about the state highway right now.
Alder Perez?
Okay, so what model, other than what it would look like, what is it that the city would require of them to submit for consideration? Is there a outline of information like we do for bars and that kind of thing that they would need to follow?
Well, there isn't a specific written policy in place. There's simply the history that the city has previously used. Obviously, we have the recent example of the street art on Wisconsin Avenue that the Common Council approved. There have been a couple of approvals. I think the one outside of Walden School is the only one that actually ever happened. But the requester submitted a plan, showed what the design would look like, and the Common Council had that in front of it when making its decision.
Alder Perez?
So can the Common Council deny this particular art since the city has already set precedent and permitted another group to bring art to the city on the street?
Well, Alderman, every request needs to be considered individually. So your question's not quite as simple. There's not quite as simple an answer as the question is. And I think until that there is a specific proposal and we know for sure, for instance, if they just wanted to put this on a side street, not a state highway, but a city-controlled road, maybe the council could talk about it, but we do need, I need to know what the state's going to say about it. I need to be able to give you that information. So whatever else happens right now, it's all dependent upon that. But at this moment, the city has followed a prior model. I'm not going to speculate on whether the Common Council would have any basis to approve or deny until the Common Council has the information in front of it.
So is the plan that was previously approved, is that in its complexity and completeness within Legistar?
It was attached to the agenda item that was before the, was it an executive committee meeting? I forget which committee approved it, and then the common council approved.
Public Works and Services
Committee, I'm
approved.
sorry, this committee approved
Okay.
it, and then the common council approved it. So it was attached to that agenda however many weeks ago that was.
So if the hot government group follows that criteria, we would say for now that that would probably be adequate to move forward.
I would say that would be adequate for them to apply.
Okay.
Alder Santiago?
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman. I would like to say that I'm all for honest and open government and freedom of speech. However, in this case, I'm a little concerned that this is the long-form name of an existing organization, and if we were to paint that on the street, it could be inferred that the city is endorsing or otherwise is behind the views of that organization, and that could open us up to some type of legal implications. I would direct this to the city attorney. Is there any implications with that, being that it is the long-form name of an existing organization?
Again, that's a simple question without a simple answer. And I want to be careful about giving legal advice in an open forum like this. And I want to be careful that I don't give an answer until we see exactly what is proposed and how it's proposed, so I don't give you the wrong answer.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions?
Move to defer.
Second.
It's been moved to defer, but do we want to put a time frame that once the proposal has been submitted and it's submitted to the Department of Transportation and they give us the directive whether they approve the 20 or not, then when we have an answer, we can bring it back to the committee. Are the motioner willing to rephrase the deferment until
No.
such time as we have an answer from the state?
No, I think it's up to that group to make their proposal after the answer from the state comes. I don't think we need to set a timeline, and I'm not going to adjust it that way.
Well, if they permit the proposal, the state still has to okay it. So we would have to wait until they okay it before we can move on it. Is that correct?
Well, to be clear, I'm not certain if the state would approve something or if they require the state's approval. That's the inquiry I've made of the state, and we're trying to determine that. I don't know for sure that we can say the state must approve it or even would approve it.
Well, what I was saying was, do we need to wait till we have an answer back from the state before we move forward? Commissioner Rooney?
Yeah, I think this is going to run on two parallel paths. I think one thing that needs to happen is the requester for this needs to provide something for the Public Works and Services Committee and the Department of Public Works to look at and see what it is that they want to do. The one that was just done recently between the LEC and the courthouse on Wisconsin Avenue, the requester provided, I think, a 4-page PDF describing exactly what they wanted to do, what they were going to display. Yes, there were stipulations that were carved out that came out of this committee by the city attorney, what their responsibilities were, what permits they needed to pull, liability insurance, hold harmless agreements, all those things. That would have to happen regardless of whether this requester wanted to put it on a state trunk highway or not. So that has to happen. We don't even know what this requester actually wants to mark on the roadway. And I think running parallel to that, as the city attorney explained, he needs to get in contact with somebody either at Southeast Region or at the main office in Madison to determine whether they will even allow these type of pavement markings to be put on a state trunk highway. And I think once we get information on both those paths, then we can bring it back to committee as soon as we have information on both of that. So I think to Alder Land's point, I think a motion to defer is appropriate. When we get the information, trust staff to get it put back on the committee agenda and get it back in the queue for consideration.
Okay, any further questions, comments? If not, all those in favor of deferring, please please be let it known by saying aye.
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 Opposes? Motion passes. Our next item is 0524-20.
This is communication sponsored by